Okay, why don't we get started? So, first off, thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your day just to stop and learn about the Master's in Psychology program here at Divine Mercy University. So, I'll start just by introducing myself. My name is Greg Shapiro. I'm the admissions counselor here at DMU. I enroll for the Master's in Psychology program, and I've been working in the field for about a little bit over 6 years as far as enrollment and specifically focusing on social services, counseling, psychology, social work, that sort of thing. So um, I have a lot of experience just talking about what the field entails. And if you're looking toward licensure, of course, that's another story, but also going over the differences between the two. And so we're going to be going over the program. But today I'm really happy that we have a guest I'll be co-hosting with. I'm here with Emily Leedom. She's a Divine Mercy University graduate. And Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you just to introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Well, it's a real honor to participate in today's webinar. I really am a huge champion and advocate for Divine Mercy University based on my experience. So I graduated from the Master's in Psychology program in 2019. I live here in South Dakota in Sioux Falls, and I've been working for the Catholic Diocese of Sioux Falls for almost 10 years, but in my current role as the executive director of the Lourdes Center, we just rebranded. We were formerly Catholic Family Services, just rebranded on the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes last week. So I now serve as the executive director here. We're primarily a counseling clinic. I am not a licensed counselor. Like I said, I got my master's in psychology, but I'm really utilizing that to help run our agency. And so we have counselors on board. We do a lot of education and programming that integrate the psychological sciences with a Catholic vision of the human person. So needless to say, I use my master's in psychology from DMU every day, which is a great gift. I've got 3 little girls that keep me on my toes. I keep on telling my husband, blessed is he among women in our house. So
Excellent. Good. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to hide my camera just so that I'm not distracting myself. All right. So today we're going to be looking at the Master's in Psychology program, but more specifically, we're going to focus on the Marriage and Family Studies concentration. So we actually introduced these new concentrations last year. Emily, when you were in the program, were these actually in place
they were
during
just starting it as I graduated. So I actually got to have a conversation with one of my professors, and she asked for my feedback on whether or not people would appreciate that. And I was like, I would have absolutely loved that. So yeah, I'm really excited for the implementation of them. I think it's really helpful for people's different career paths.
Yeah, great, great. So today we're going to be looking at who we are as a university, what to expect, what our mission is overall, and of course the details of the Master's in Psychology program. We'll go a little bit deeper into the different concentrations, and we have 5 different concentrations, but again, we're going to mostly be focusing on marriage and family, or rather marriage and family studies. That's the official title for the concentration. And then we're going to go into the funding portion, the scholarships, the tuition itself, the different means of funding. And as we're doing this, we're going to also have a little bit of an understanding of what the program looks like from a graduate's perspective, someone that was actually active in the program. And as she's going over what her experience is, consider what this would look like for you as well, and if this is something that would work for you, and if it's compatible with your overall goals. And then, of course, at the very end, we're going to open up the floor for a Q&A. And I mentioned earlier, as some of you were coming in, you're welcome to begin dropping in your questions in the Q&A section or the chat section at the bottom of the screen. The last thing I want for any of you is to have your question, and then when we get to the end, you've forgotten it. So once you get it, feel free to drop it in, and we will answer those questions. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing I'd like to start with is the mission of our school. We are a Catholic institution. We integrate psychology with the Catholic Christian understanding of the human person, with human dignity. And that's why we exist. It's our bread and butter. And in fact, one of the things that I really love about it is our curricula was formed by members of the Dominican order. So there's even a Thomistic lens of psychology. So not only is that integrative component unique for us, separating us from so many other universities, even that Thomistic sort of Aquinas tradition that is found in it sets us apart even further and makes us a little bit more unique. So along with that, as you see on the right-hand side, we do have different schools here at Divine Mercy. We have the Institute for the Psychological Sciences. That was actually the name that we began with before we changed it to Divine Mercy University. And so these include the PsyD in clinical psychology. That's a fully residential program. So students are on campus for those 5 years. And then, of course, we have the Master's in Psychology program, which we'll be talking about today. And this one is fully online from beginning to end. We also have the School of Counseling, and this is a hybrid program, the MS in Counseling program. And once we actually introduced that school, that's when we changed our name, going to a university status. So going back to the Master's in Psychology, as I mentioned, it is fully online, but it's also done asynchronously. And so as a student, you have the flexibility to log into your classes at whatever time works within your schedule. We do have students around the world. And so some of you might be in Europe or in Asia, and then many of you might be more domestic. And regardless of where you're located, the program can be accessed at whatever time works within your time zone. So I will continue on. You know what, before I do, Emily, I do have a question as far as the integrative component, because you had mentioned that that was one of your favorite parts about it. How has that served you? I know that you work in ministry, but has that been, I just want to know sort of what your experience has been with the benefits of that.
Yeah, that was really critical for me. And in fact, it was why I ended up choosing Divine Mercy. I really had a desire. Long story short, I took a class in psychology in my undergraduate, fell in love with it, and really felt like, man, how do people go through life not knowing this stuff? I mean, I just found it that helpful to my own life and to the work that I was doing. But I knew that I wanted it to be integrated with a Catholic vision of the human person, because psychology by itself doesn't tell the whole story. There was this whole component of grace. And when I was looking at programs, I was just really convicted about the power of the integration for not only the benefit of better understanding the psychological sciences, but also for the ways that it could help me serve the church as a faithful Catholic. And yeah, so that integration piece was phenomenal. So to be able to be reading Aquinas and an article by John Gottman in the same class or whatever was just really, really compelling for me, really helpful for me. And it really shifted the way that I view the human person, be it based on the meta model of the human person, which was the first class. I remember going through that first class, looking at the meta model of the human person and thinking, this puts language to my experience and enhances my experience. So that was critical for me.
That's great. That's excellent. I'll also highlight many of you might be looking to use your degree in a ministry format in the diocese or the parish level or whatever it may be. But some of you might actually be looking to use it in a more secular environment. And so you might be asking, is this actually still a good option for me? And I'll just share with you something that I went over with the program director, Dr. Julia Clousley. And a while back, I asked her if it was a liability for students to get a psychology degree from a faith-based institution. And she understands the field. She's a clinical psychologist, and she has a lot of experience with that. Her answer to that was no, this is not a liability. This is recognized as a strength in the industry. And the reason why is because there are a lot of students who they graduate, they earn their degree from a secular standpoint that don't have that integrative component. And they're very equipped when they're in the field to talk about trauma and crisis and to address mental health difficulties and addiction and things related to that. But when the client brings up faith and spirituality, many times they have to dodge that. They're not equipped to address that. And so this is actually a gap that's been, or rather a void that's been found in the field, and more professionals have been wanting folks to be able to have that ability to address those as well. So that's not only just something that makes us unique, but we're actually preparing students to thrive in their field, whether it's in a more religious setting or even a secular setting. So I will, from there, continue on. And just to go over our accreditation, we are regionally accredited through SACS. That's the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. It's one of the 7 major accrediting bodies. And in the bottom left side, we have the APA. Now, this is a specific accreditation. It's a national accreditation that's connected with the PsyD program. So you would find this in a doctoral level. However, which, by the way, our doctoral program is APA accredited. But with that, I still like to highlight this because we do use the APA writing style in this program so that we can better prepare you for the field. And then we also have, if you look on the right side, NC-SARA. And this stands for the National Council for State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. And what this means is that regardless of where you're located, whether you're here in the States or you're in Canada or wherever you are, your degree, though it's being earned online and not on campus, it'll be recognized as coming from a regionally accredited institution. So I will continue on. And as I mentioned before, here's just a few reasons to look toward this program. One is that you might be looking for a program that is done online just for your accessibility. You might have busy work lives or home lives, and it being done online and asynchronously is very useful for that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we're regionally accredited, which is what you do want to look for when you're seeking out different schools. And then another thing, the GRE is not required. So you can breathe. This is a step that you will not have to take if you decide to continue on and enroll. So I would like to just pause here and ask you all, if you'd like to drop in the chat, what sort of position are you looking for in this, in earning this degree? Or what is it that you would like to do with your degree? How is it that you would like to apply it? So go ahead and in the chat, feel free to share that information. For many of you, it might be because this will be a way for you to break into the field. Some of you might already be working in the field, and this is a way for you to advance in that current position. Maybe you want to gain your credentials. Some people use this degree because it'll be a way for them to climb the ladder and grow their income as well.
Greg, as people are typing that into the box, it's just making me reflect on kind of where I was when I started the program. And like I said, I was working in ministry and really had this desire to integrate the what could be obtained from the psychological sciences into ministry work. So for me, I really had a passion around marriage and family, and personally and professionally, my husband and I just seemed to have a series of couples that reached out to us in need of support. So personally, we were experiencing that. And then professionally, working in a ministry setting, I just felt like so much of what I was doing could be enhanced with the education of the psychological sciences. So with the understanding the behavior of the person, why do people do the things that they do? Why do they think the way that they think? How do we break vicious cycles that people find themselves in? So it's fun for me to reflect on that. And now gosh, how many years later? 3 years later, after graduating the program, I'm noticing how I'm able to do that. You know, we're planning a series on healing with my agency, and a lot of the curriculum and what we're doing is what I learned specifically around that integration of the psychological and faith component. So it's fun for me to reflect on as well.
You know, and it's interesting because you're not the first graduate that I've spoken to that's mentioned that this degree has benefited them in ways that they didn't expect, whether it's in their personal lives because it's just allowed them to better work with communication, along with other programs that they've been working in, or if they've been doing volunteer work and how this degree has led to that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's great. Good. So I'm seeing some answers here. Catholic Mental Health Ministry, ministry here. That's excellent. Again, many of you might be looking to do this within ministry or human services or as a means to grow in your current field. But that could be used in many different directions. So great. Well, I will continue on. And again, this is just an example, an illustration of the different purposes of going through with this degree and adding it to your credentials. So for many of you, it might be to increase your earnings or toward a promotion. Many of you might be looking to just having those extra letters at the end of your name. It's a good way to qualify yourself in the field that you're working toward or that you're currently in. Many of you might actually be looking to one day continue on and getting your doctorate, and the master's in psychology can certainly lend to creating that foundation. And of course, it could be done with expanding your network. It could be done in going into academia or different types of careers. So again, we have a lot of different students that go into this for many different reasons. So now we're going to get into the concentrations. And I'll first highlight that as a student, and this is a little bit different than how it was, of course, Emily, when you were in the program, since the curriculum has changed. But for students that are going into the program, every student is taking a total of 11 courses, and 8 of them are going to be core courses. So these are the courses that everyone takes. But then you have your choice of the electives that you would like to take. So these are found in the different concentrations. So one is, of course, what we'll be talking about today, marriage and family studies. And this is a good option for students that want to have a background with this population, whether they're working in ministry or they're working in human services, or if it's tying into even something like INO psychology, if they need it to better themselves with consulting or HR. So it really does go in different directions. And then we have pre-PhD. Again, a lot of students use their degree to establish that foundation and eventually go into their doctorate. And the pre-PhD, it's ideal for those that are looking to go into academia or research. And that's primarily why the program is designed. But again, it's a great way to better prepare yourself for when you go into your doctorate. And then next we have leadership psychology. And this is a good option for students that are taking on more leadership positions. And whether that's within INO psychology or education or in different diocesan offices, it really lends to that. It ties into things like positive psychology and the like. And then next we have self-design. Now the self-design concentration, this is actually, I'm going to touch on that in the second part actually. I want to go into human services and then we'll go into self-design. Human services is a newer concentration. This is one of our newest ones, in fact. And in the program, while it is a psychology program, you are picking up on some counseling techniques, which will be very useful for you. This one just hones in a little bit deeper, and it's primarily for those that are going into more of a human services direction, whether that's case management or behavioral analytics. But again, just having a deeper understanding of these counseling techniques can be very useful in those fields. But let me go back to self-design. And I like to highlight this one last because the concentrations are good for those that want to tailor the program to what it is they're looking to do. Self-design will allow you to customize it even further. So the self-design track allows you to take electives from different concentrations. So for instance, maybe you're interested in marriage and family studies, but you're also interested in human services counseling and you don't know which one would be a better fit. If you wanted to take electives from each one, you could do that. You'd still be taking a total of 3. So maybe you're taking 2 from human services counseling and 1 from marriage and family studies, or maybe it's the other way around. But either way, this is a great way for you to customize it. It'll still be 3 electives, so it doesn't change the amount of time it takes to complete your degree, nor does it change the overall cost. So from there, just to show you the courses laid out in their order that you'd be taking them. So these are all the courses found in the marriage and family studies concentration. And as you see, we have the 8 core courses on the left, and then we have 4 electives on the right. And the reason why they're 4 is because you do get to make a choice between 2 of them. So again, it will be equaling 3. And then we have 2 of the faculty members that actually teach on the electives. The one on the far right, Dr. Walter Shu, Father Walter Shu, I see him regularly, and he's just seeing his experience in communicating with students, and our faculty all of our faculty members have been great with communicating with students and providing support. But I work very closely with Father Shu, and just seeing his enthusiasm for psychology and for the students has been very encouraging. So I'll continue on, and the next part I like to highlight are the different the different potential positions that you might be looking toward. And we've also highlighted on the right side the salaries that we collected from salary.com. Now, just to highlight, this is more based in very specific areas. You might be in an area completely different from what you're seeing listed. So if your income is a big part of this and maybe even a deciding factor for you, I would encourage you to do research to see what the income would look like if you were to go into any of these positions. Because again, it might be different. Someone in DC might be looking at an income of, at the very top, it says 125,000, whereas someone that lives in perhaps a more rural area, it might be a little bit lower. It really all depends on the position you're taking and your location. But looking at these positions, this is tying into social and mental health services. Some of you are here for that particular reason. And as you're seeing, it really does stretch out. There are a lot of different opportunities for those that do have a master's in psychology. And just the ability to recognize mental health difficulties serves well in each of these. So I will continue on. And with more career opportunities, this is in industrial and organizational positions. So I know psychology, for instance. Many of you might be working in more corporate environment, or maybe it's what you'd like to continue doing or going into. And so as you see, having a master's in psychology works well for HR, it works well for organizational consulting, it works within research, it works in project coordinating. We have a graduate that we've actually highlighted on our website. He works in Silicon Valley. And he had mentioned that for a lot of folks that go into his role in HR, sometimes they look toward their MBA. But for those that want to have more of a human approach to it, they want to have a better way of communicating with their colleagues or with the clients, psychology is very useful for that. So I'll continue on now. And looking at more, we have education. And a lot of students, they use their degree to go into education. So whether it's because they want to teach psychology at a community college level or a high school level, sometimes they go into other types of higher education positions or into career counseling. And then we also have government and law enforcement. And for a lot of these folks, they go into criminal profiling, or they go into being a drug and alcohol specialist, or working with vocational rehabilitation. And so again, this is a very broad degree. It really does work in many different directions because of the ability to understand the human mind and to build on your communication skills. These are very, very much valued in all of these types of positions. And then ministry. And again, some of you have highlighted that you're looking to go into ministry fields. So whether it's at the parish level or with the diocese, or maybe you want to work within faith formation or marriage preparation. Some of you might even be working already in the field. Some of you might be consecrated religious, or maybe you're lay and working in ministry. But having a master's in psychology is a great way for you to better work with these populations. And the next thing that I want to highlight, and I'd also like to bring Emily in on this, is the different tracks, because as a student, you'll get to choose whether you want to complete your degree in 26 months or in 16 months. And for many of you, you might be asking, what will the time frame look like for me? And what will it look like for me week by week? Because if you're thinking to yourself on this, if it were me, I'd want to know, is this something that I can do with my current schedule? And so just to highlight for you, this is not set in stone. This is just more of a pattern that we've seen. For those that are doing the 26-month track, they're usually committing between 15 to 18 hours per week. And then for the 16-month track, it's somewhere between 25 and 30 hours. Again, this is more of a pattern that we've seen, but it really could vary depending on the term, depending on the course that you're taking. Emily, so your experience, you were in the program, and what did it look like for you as far as the time commitment?
Yeah, so I did the 26-month track, and when I started, I was about 3 months postpartum with my first baby. I think a few people thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. And by the time I finished, I think we added another little one to our family. But some of the best advice that I got prior to starting the program was that I was pursuing this for my own benefits, out of my own desire, out of my own heart for continued growth in this area. And I think just shifting the disposition from what many of us experience in education around, oh, I have to do this, 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 and this, and this to pass the test or whatever. I really shifted my disposition when I started this program to, I want to obtain anything, whatever I can receive from the program. And that might mean that some weeks as a brand new mom, I wasn't going to get to every single one of the reading assignments. Or some weeks it was going to be a bit more and some weeks a bit less. So for me, I just really needed to customize it because of where I was at in my life and what I could offer to it, what I could kind of take from it, if you will. So I would say there wasn't a lot of weeks where I hit that 18 hours, simply because I was working full time and I was a brand new mom. There was maybe a few weeks where I was writing papers or, where we had some larger assignments that maybe it was a little bit closer to that. But oftentimes I would work over my lunch hour, work on my schoolwork over my lunch hour, over the noon hour, which was really helpful. So I could carve it into my day. And then maybe after my kiddos went to bed for 30 minutes to an hour, depending upon what I could offer to it. So that was really helpful. And yeah, it depended upon the week. It depended upon the coursework. Some courses for me were really, it was just so fascinating that I could move through the content pretty quickly. There were some other courses, for for example, the one where we had to read some of the Summa. And that was really challenging for me. So I think I got on a few Zoom calls with Dr. Gross and just said, okay, you got to walk me through this, and found that really helpful. So it really depended upon the course. But again, I think really shifting that posture to, I'm going to take what I can receive from this instead of, oh, I'm overwhelmed with how much I have to do, was extraordinarily helpful in just my experiencing the program as so life-giving.
Emily, I really appreciate you not just sharing that, but even highlighting the support that you get from faculty. That's something that every time we speak with faculty, they highlight how much they love lending that sort of support.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a concern with the online program for a lot of students. Am I going to feel connected? And I think it says something that, I was an online student and I feel extraordinarily connected to Divine Mercy. I'm proud of my education from Divine Mercy. In some ways, I feel more connected to DMU than I do my undergrad. And I just think that says something. That says something about the faculty. That says something about the alumni coordinator. That says something about the reputation that DMU has. That I'm really proud of it. And yeah, feel really connected to it. And I think that a lot of that is from the professors and their willingness to jump on Zoom calls, to think of me, when they were doing research, and to say, oh, I bet Emily would be really interested in this. Let's partner with her. So that was really neat.
Absolutely. And for all the students as well, when they're active, they do connect with their professors pretty frequently. It's actually part of their activity in the terms, but the main reason for it is just to provide support for you. They want to make sure that you are doing well in the program, that you're learning the content. They want to make sure that they're there for you ultimately to assist you in thriving in the program. And Emily, did you also, how is that sort of support with your cohort? Since it's done online, a lot of people might be thinking that they might not get that same sort of camaraderie or that same sort of support that they might get at a brick and mortar school. What was it like for you?
Yeah, it's kind of neat that there's people that I've never met that I'm now Facebook friends with, that there's a religious sister that was in my cohort that emailed me a couple months ago and let me know that she was, in the Diocese of Sioux Falls where I live, and got to visit our retreat center. And I just thought, how cool, that I've really, like I said, I've never even met them in real life. But we were, a few times we were really proactive about creating little study groups, prior to an exam, or I remember there was a particular paper that a lot of us were a bit lost in. And so we jumped on with our professor. And so just getting to interact, even virtually, really helped me feel more connected. And I kind of had a few of those go-to people in my cohort that I would call and say, hey, have you written your paper yet? Because that's what you do in a normal classroom setting, right? Like, how long is your paper? Well, how long is your paper? And so I got to do that just virtually via email and in other ways with some of my cohort. And that made me feel a lot more connected, which was great.
Yeah, I love that. That's excellent. Good. So, while we're on this slide, and Emily, again, thank you so much for just sharing sort of what that time commitment looks like for you. But while we're on here, I just want to give you a little bit more of clarity of what the terms look like and what a semester looks like as well. And then also we're looking at different costs, and I want to explain that. And just to preface, we also have scholarships again. So I don't want you to think this is sort of where it stops. But as far as the program, it is semester based. And so we do have 3 different semesters, and with the exception of the summer, each semester contains 2 different terms. And so it's split up into 2 parts. Your first term, or rather each term is 8 weeks. And so if you're doing the 26-month track, that means that you're taking 1 course per term. And then if you're doing the 16-month track, on average, you'd be taking 2 courses per term. It wouldn't be that way for every term, but for most of them, that would be the case. So along with that, let's just jump into the tuition, because we're looking at that right now. These numbers are actually off. I do have good news. The cost is lower than what you're looking at. So this is actually something that we need to readjust. But with this program, it's 33 credits. And the reason why we're looking at 26 months is because with a different cost is because it's $7.96 per credit and there's a $50 tech fee per course. The books are included, however, so this is a cost you won't have to worry about. And again, because it's done online, you won't have to worry about any sort of costs for travel or any of those kinds of expenses. So the actual cost for the 26-month track is $26,818. And we have this reflecting on our website as well. Now, for the 16-month track, the reason why it's going to be a little bit less is because for every term that you're taking 2 courses, that second course is going to be 25% less. So for that one, the cost is actually $24,413. And again, that's before we apply any sort of scholarships, which we're going to talk about next. So along with that, we do have different ways of funding your education. And so many students, they utilize student loans. We do work with that. So in other words, putting in your FAFSA application and qualifying for that. And then some of you might not want to use student loans. Some of you would prefer to pay out of pocket. That's an option as well. So if you wanted to set up a payment plan and paying those installments per term, that's another option for you. And again, so going back to the scholarships, we do have 13 different scholarships available. These are just a few of them that we've listed out, but we have all of them available to review on our website. And as you're seeing, they range between the dollar amount to the percentage. It could be between 2,000 to 5,000 to 10% to 25%. It could go all the way up to 50%, in fact, which is a very, I'd say, rare scholarship. It's usually for those that apply very soon, very quickly, in fact. But what I would encourage you to do is take that time to look at the different scholarships that you do qualify for. And as a student, you can apply up to 4 of them and receive up to 2. And there's a scholarship for everybody. So if you were inclined to bring that cost down, I would encourage you to do that. And then another way of bringing the costs down, and this is an either or option for you, but one way of doing it is through the MOUs, or the Memorandum of Understandings. And this is just a list of different locations and different dioceses and colleges that we have partnerships with. And so if you do have any connection with any of these, then it's very possible that we'd be able to bring your costs down through an MOU. If not, though, that's okay. If you wanted to speak with your parish or with your diocese, or if it's with your school or whatever it may be, to see if they're open to doing an MOU and creating that partnership to bring the costs down, we could certainly do that for you. There's no monetary impact for you. And again, we would just make sure that that conversation is had, but this is certainly an option.
And if you're from Sioux Falls, I'm working to get this set up with the Diocese of Sioux Falls as well. So
that'd be great. That'd be excellent. Good. So that brings us to the end. And I will highlight before we open up the floor for Q&A, our next start date is coming up on May 18th. That'll be our summer semester. And right now we actually are offering an early application scholarship for $1,500. And this scholarship is a bonus one. This would be stacked on top of any other scholarship, or if you're using an MOU, it'll be stacked on top of that to bring your costs down even further. That deadline is coming up though. So if you wanted to utilize that and qualify for it, now would be the time to submit your application form on our website. And going into the application, if you're looking at that little blue box at the bottom, this is a code that will allow us to waive the $55 application fee. So feel free to save that. So as you're seeing, it's CC for Catholic Christian, MM for Meta Model, and P for Person, and then 1999, the year that we were established. So again, if you wanted to begin your application and submit it, include that code and we'll waive the fee for you. And then my contact information is here as well. And so feel free to screen grab it or jot it down. I'd love to connect with each of you one-on-one to see if this is a good option for you. So with all of that said, I would love to now begin going into our Q&A. Emily, are you ready for that?
Yeah, I think so. Ready or not,
Good.
here we go, right?
Yeah, good. Okay, so the first question, this actually looks like more of a question for me. Can a student transfer from the MS in Psychology program to the PsyD in Clinical Psychology? This is a great question. So on one hand, students can certainly begin with their master's in psychology to establish that foundation before they go into their doctorate. And for many students, they do this, maybe because they didn't have that background in their undergrad, and this is a good way for them to better prepare for it. So you could do that. Now, I would not treat this as a stepping stone program. In other words, we wouldn't be able to transfer the courses in. 2 years into your PsyD, you do actually earn your Master of Psychology. And so they wouldn't be considered transferable or overlapping. But rather, a good way of looking at it is if you wanted to build that foundation so that you can better prepare and better become eligible to enter into the PsyD program, that could be a good reason to start with your master's in psychology. So let me go into the next question. Is the order of the courses the same regardless of starting in June, May, or August? Yes, absolutely. So the courses that you saw when we listed the curriculum, the sequence is going to be the same. So you'll be starting with one course, and as we list them out on our website as well, that will be the order that you're taking them. Will you repeat how many classes per term per each track?
I think that might have been the 16-month track versus the 26-month track. So the 2 classes on average at a time, I think is maybe the time where that question popped in.
Yep, I see. So we will repeat how many classes per term per each track. So not every term will actually involve the same amount of courses that you're taking. For instance, for those that are doing the 16-month track, their first term will only be 1 course. So it's a good way for you to dip your toes in before you go a little bit further with doing 2 courses per term. How much written work is required for the class participation each week? Emily, if you'd like to answer that one. So how much written work is required for class participation each week?
Yeah, so one of the weekly dynamics of the program is that you put a post out every week in response to a question related to the reading assignment or related to the content for that week. And then the goal is that you would also engage with your peers. So you write your, I think it's like 600 words or something like that, not long. And then you also write in response to some of your other cohort members. And then it's hard for me to remember now, but I would say within every class, the courses were 8 weeks at a time, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say within every class, there was maybe one paper that was required, and those varied in lengths. I remember kind of towards the end of the program, there was probably the longest paper, which was 10 to 12 pages, but you kind of build it over the course, over the coursework. And I found that extraordinarily helpful. So it's not like all of a sudden, okay, here you go, write a 12-page paper. It really builds on itself. And then you can use the content from the previous papers that you've put together and integrate them into your longer piece. So I feel like, yeah, the faculty is really helpful in that way. They recognize that it can be a bit daunting. And so they really, are wise about how they build it.
Great. And we have a 2-part question from Pamela. So Pamela, you asked, do many people do the MS in psychology and then go into spiritual direction? after that. And then your second part to that was, could you combine spiritual direction into your electives? So while spiritual direction is its own entity, it's its own program to go into, it wouldn't be counted as part of the concentrations. But we do have a lot of different students that actually continue on either to doing their spiritual direction certificate after earning their degree, or sometimes they begin with spiritual direction and then they move on to doing their master's in psychology. So we do have a lot of people that are considered alumni with the university that continue on into a new program. So let's see. Ryan asks, he's from Sioux Falls, and he said, Emily, in your opinion, which degree program and or option in the master's in psychology program would most meet the various needs and benefits and benefit the most people, have a greatest job position in this area of the Midwest that both your family and my family have domicile? What are the best strengths and weaknesses? You know what, let me stop there, and then I'll ask the second part of the question. So it sounds like Ryan is asking about how much need there is with this degree in Sioux Falls and what sort of benefits there are in having this degree in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put my email address in the full chat because I'd love to, Ryan, connect a little bit more directly on this specific question. But I really think it depends on the key discernment question, I think, for people looking at this program is, do they want to pursue licensure, or do they want to integrate the psychological sciences into one of those other, myriad of kind of career opportunities that Greg, you highlighted really well. I just think that's a very important distinction to look at. Do I want to practice one-on-one in a licensed mental health capacity? Or do I want to integrate this into, another field? So I would say that really depends. Both are critically needed across the United States right now. There's really a lack of awesome Catholic counselors. We just need more awesome Catholic counselors that are licensed, but we also need more people that are integrating this work into various human service capacities and that really have the education to enhance the work that they're doing, whether that's in a secular field or in ministry world. So both are essential, both are deeply needed right now, at least in the Midwest, and is what I'm seeing. And I think across the United States, we're seeing that as well. But I'll put my email in the chat because I would love to continue the conversation based on kind of what we're seeing here at the Lourdes Center and across the state.
Great, yeah. I appreciate you also sharing your information for all of our guests. And Ryan also had a second part to the question. And one thing that he asked was, what were the strengths and weaknesses between our program and those that, in case you did any sort of comparison with other universities in South Dakota. I don't know if you did much comparing as you were going into this program or before you enrolled, but yeah. Could you touch on that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So by far, I would say the key strength of this program is the Catholic integration, and then the networking that comes because of the Catholic integration, if that makes sense. So when I was looking at a lot of different programs, and I think anybody on here is probably looking at various programs, whether that be within, a state school or another Christian school in your area, that kind of thing. I really had a desire for that Catholic integration piece, and I knew that I just wasn't going to get that. And to be honest, I just wasn't super confident in my ability to vet it out even. If I had a secular professor telling me, this is why divorce is really great or something like that, right? Hopefully I would have been able to pick up on, wait a second here, but to be able to get the research and that holistic kind of well-rounded view of some of these real critical issues in society, I really wanted the Catholic perspective to help form and to guide me in that. So I would say that above and beyond is the key strong point of this program. Weaknesses, I think the online thing can be challenging for people. I think you have to be pretty engaged as a student. I think you have to be willing to email professors and that kind of thing. If you're willing to do that, if you're a type of student that's going to really engage in your education, it works and it's great. If that's really challenging for you, I could see that being a difficulty with this dynamic. But again, I think if you're an engaged student, the online program allowed me to do this program in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise because of my role as a busy mom and working full time, that kind of thing.
And Emily, we also have another question that I think you can answer. So David asked, can you tell me some of the key Catholic authors you read during the course on top of Aquinas?
Yeah. Oh man, ones that I actually read during the course. I would have to go back. I can picture book titles and articles, and I'm struggling to come up. We read some Helen Alvarez. We read some Wilcox, and I apologize, I can't think of it. Brad Wilcox, I think is his first name. Those were big. And now I'm not sure if Dr. Bob Schutz's work is actually included in the curriculum or in the coursework, but I read a lot of Dr. Bob Schutz. I really appreciate what he's put out there. So those are a few that come to my mind. And we read some scripture, we read the Bible. So, and then some John Paul II, theology of the body stuff are the ones that I can think of right now.
Yeah, and they're also highlighted in the Catholic Christian meta model for the person, and so that's sort of a referencing point for many of the students here at Divine Mercy. And let's see, I'm just looking at the time, so we're going to be wrapping up soon, but I do have one more question here, which I think I can answer. Pamela asked, is the first step to apply to DMU and then afterwards to apply for the scholarships? That's a great question. And again, so what we'll do is we'll do a one-on-one if any of you are deciding that you'd like to take that next step. And we'll go over it just to make sure the program is a good option for you and if it meets with your overall goals. And from there, we'll talk about the application process. Applying for scholarships is actually part of the application process. But the very first thing that every student does when they get to that point where they're ready to apply is they go to the website and they fill out the application form. Just by doing that and submitting that, one, that's going to qualify you for the early application scholarship. And two, that's going to put you into applicant status with the university so that at that point you can communicate with the financial aid department to set up your funding portion. And then of course, from there, you'll be submitting your documentation, which again, we'll go over if you decide to continue on with your application process. So that actually concludes all of it. It looks like we have gone through all of the questions and answers. But again, I'm going to go ahead and put my contact information in as well. But Emily jotted in her email address. So if any of you have any questions for Emily, she was gracious enough to include that. So you're welcome to send her an email if you wanted, again, to dig a little bit deeper into what the program looks like for you, what it would look like for you rather, as an active student here at Divine Mercy. So again, thank you all so much for being here. Emily, thank you so much for hosting with me and just sharing about how this program has been beneficial for you and how you've been able to use your degree.
Yeah, I'm honored to do so. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you all for coming here. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. All right, God bless.